Part 2. A human shared his sleeping bag with an alien girl, and everything changed overnight. Against his chest, directly over his heart, your heart beats so strongly so. Differently from ours, Richard covered her hand with his own Narin. I'm not sure. This is when a luminary chooses a mate, she interrupted softly. It is not just for physical pleasure, but for the harmonizing of life forces. It is sacred. The implication of her words hung between them, heavy with meaning. And is that what you're suggesting? He asked carefully. Her orange eyes met his unwavering. I am suggesting that what began in your sleeping bag need not end there, that perhaps our meeting was not merely a chance, but something more. Richard felt a pull toward her that defied logic or protocol, a connection that transcended their different species. Their different worlds. The gathering tonight, she continued, it will include a ritual to honor my father's memory. I would be honored if you would stand with me as my chosen, your chosen, he repeated. My companion, my protector. Her markings pulsed brighter. My potential mate. The invitation was clear, the attraction undeniable in the strange pulsing light of the luminary sanctuary far from Earth and everything familiar. Richard made his decision. I would be honored, he said, and bent to press his lips gently against hers. The gathering chamber pulsed with light and energy. Dozens of luminari assembled in concentric circles around a central dais. Richard stood beside Narin, feeling distinctly out of place in his coalition uniform among the flowing garments of the aliens, yet no one seemed to view him with suspicion, only curiosity and surprisingly respect. Allier approached, now adorned with ceremonial markings that enhanced their natural purple patterns. It is time, they announced, gesturing for Narin to step forward. She squeezed Richard's hand reassuringly before sending to the dais. The assembled luminary began a harmonic chant, their markings synchronizing into pulsing waves of light that flowed through the chamber like water. Elier presented Narin with a small crystal sphere that glowed with an inner fire. The essence of Nyx, they in one left in our keeping until the rightful heir should claim it. Narin accepted the sphere, reverently holding it before her. I, Narin Nyx, daughter of High Counselor Terran Nyx, accept the sacred trust and the responsibilities it entails. The sphere pulsed brighter, seeming to respond to her voice, then to Richard's astonishment. It projected a holographic image, the face of an older luminary male with distinguished features and markings similar to Narin's father. She whispered, her voice catching the image. Spoke, its voice resonating with authority and warmth. Narin, my daughter, if you are viewing this message, then I have passed into the great light and you have found your way to one of our sanctuaries. There is much you must know. The hologram shifted, displaying star charts and data streams too complex for Richard to follow. The traditionalists seek not merely to isolate our people, but to weaponize our technology against the coalition. They fear humanity most of all, for in humans they see a reflection of what we once were: adaptable, resilient, innovative qualities many luminari have lost through millennia of isolation. Narin's markings pulsed rapidly as she absorbed her father's words. The hologram continued, I have left safeguards, technologies that can counter their weapons, but they can only be activated by one with the primal pattern. The image shifted again, focusing directly on Narin. You, my daughter, carry this pattern within you. It has lain dormant, but when the time comes, it will awaken then too. Richard's shock. The hologram turned, as if looking directly at him. Captain Richard Mills of Earth. A murmur ran through the assembled luminari. Richard stepped forward, stunned. How did he know my name? I selected you specifically for this mission, the hologram continued. Your psychological profile, your service record, your genetic compatibility, all made you the ideal protector for my daughter. The connection between you is no accident, but a carefully orchestrated necessity. Richard felt a chill run down his spine. Had his entire career been manipulated to bring him to this moment? Do not misunderstand. The the hologram said, as if sensing his discomfort. Your choices remained your own. I merely ensured you would have the opportunity to make them. The bond that has formed between you and my daughter is genuine and essential for what is to come. The message ended the sphere. Dimming to a soft glow, Naren stood motionless, her markings pulsing erratically with emotion. Yalawa broke the silence. It is as the prophecies foretold. The human and the bearer of the primal pattern united against darkness. Prophecies. Richard questioned what prophecies before anyone could answer. Naren gasped, doubling over. Her orange markings suddenly flared with blinding intensity, shifting and rearranging themselves across her skin into more complex patterns. What's happening to her? Richard demanded, rushing to her side. The awakening, Eli explained, their voice filled with awe. The primal pattern emerges. Richard cradled Naren as her body trembled with the transformation. Her skin burned hot against his, her markings now forming intricate, fractal-like designs that seemed to move with a life of their own. Richard, she whispered, her eyes finding his. I can feel it, the knowledge, the power. It's overwhelming. I'm here, he assured her, holding her close. I won't leave you. The transformation lasted several minutes, during which the assembled luminari watched in reverent silence. When it finally subsided, Naren stood with Richard's support. Her appearance subtly but significantly altered. Her orange markings now formed complex geometric patterns that seemed to contain entire universes within them, and her eyes shimmered with newfound power and understanding. I understand now, she said, her voice stronger, more resonant. What my father was protecting, what they traditionalists fear. What is it? Richard asked. The ability to merge consciousness across species, she explained, to share not just thoughts or emotions but entire ways of being. The primal pattern is the key to true unity between all sentient life. She turned to face him fully, her transformed markings pulsing with emotion. This is why the connection between us matters. Humans and luminary, once joined in understanding, could lead the coalition into a new era of cooperation, and the traditionalists fear this. Richard asked. They fear change, Elliot interjected. They fear losing what makes us luminary, Barbara, but that's not what would happen. Naren insisted. We wouldn't lose ourselves, we would expand, grow as all living things must. She placed her hands on Richard's chest, her markings responding to his proximity. What we began in that sleeping bag, the curiosity, the exploration, the connection, it was the first step towards something greater than either of us. Richard covered her hand with his own, feeling a strange resonance between them, as if her energy was harmonizing with his at some fundamental level. When we return to my quarters, she said softly, for his ears alone, I would show you the full meaning of luminary joining, not just bodies but minds and spirits. The invitation sent a thrill through him that was equal parts desire and trepidation. Is that safe for either of us? With the primal pattern awakened in me, yes, she assured him. It will be unlike anything you've experienced. Unlike anything any human has experienced. With a luminari, the gathering concluded with a ceremonial blessing, after which Naren and Richard were escorted back to their chambers, now a single larger space that had been prepared for them as a bonded pair despite no formal announcement of such a relationship. Your people seem to be making assumptions, Richard observed as they entered the chamber, which was now filled with softly glowing crystals and fragrant blooms. Luminari can sense the energy between compatible beings, Naren explained, her transformed markings casting complex patterns of light across the walls. They knew what we would choose before we did. As the door sealed behind them, she turned to him, her expression both vulnerable and determined. Richard Mills of Earth, she said formally, I invite you to join with me in body, mind, and spirit to forge a bond that transcends our separate species. Richard stepped closer, drawn to her with an intensity that defied explanation. And what happens after, when we reach Proxima, everything changes, she said simply, for both of us, for our peoples. He Q puffed her face, gently studying the mesmerizing patterns that now adorned her skin. No pressure. Then he said with a small smile, she laughed, the sound like music, her markings brightening with joy. None at all. Their lips met, and with that kiss the final barriers between them began to dissolve. What followed was a joining unlike any in human experience, a melding of bodies and consciousness that transcended physical pleasure, revealing the true meaning behind her innocent exploration in that shared sleeping bag. So many days ago, in the aftermath, as they lay entwined, Richard understood that his life would never be the same, that the path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges from both the luminary traditionalists and those within the coalition who would fear such a union. But in that moment, with Naren's transformed markings pulsing in harmony with his heartbeat, those concerns seemed distant and manageable. What happens now? He asked, tracing the intricate patterns on her shoulder. Now, she replied, her eyes reflecting the light of distant stars. We prepare to face what comes next together. The Voyager emerged from the nebula 3 days later, its systems fully repaired and enhanced with subtle luminary modifications that wouldn't be immediately obvious to coalition inspectors. Richard stood on the bridge, watching as the swirling gases receded behind them, feeling both renewed and fundamentally changed course. He set for Proxima Station, Jackson reported, giving his captain a knowing glance. The entire crew had noticed the transformation in their relationship with Naren, though none dared comment directly. Proceed at standard speed, Richard ordered. No need to draw attention by rushing. Naren entered the bridge, now dressed in a formal luminary diplomatic outfit that complemented her transformed markings while still allowing them to be visible. The crew's eyes widened slightly at her appearance. She radiated a quiet power that hadn't been present before. Captain, she greeted him formally, though her eyes conveyed a much more intimate message. May I speak with you privately? In his ready room, away from curious eyes, she immediately moved into his embrace, her markings brightening at his touch. Their connection had deepened since their joining, creating a bond that transcended physical attraction. When they touched, Richard could sense her emotions, catch glimpses of her thoughts, and experience both exhilarating and occasionally overwhelming. The sanctuary's long-range sensors detected Krell vessels near Proxima. She informed him, Commander Vexnar is persistent. Not surprising, Richard replied, stroking her silver hair. We embarrassed him by slipping away. And if your father was right about the Krell's interest in luminary technology, he was, she confirmed. During my transformation, I accessed memories my father embedded in the primal pattern. He identified the Krell as primary collaborators with the traditionalists seeking to exploit our technology for their empire's expansion. Richard whistled softly. That's a serious accusation. We'll need evidence, which is precisely what awaits us at Proxima. Naren explained. My father established a secure data vault there containing everything he discovered, but we must reach it before Vexnar intercepts us. We will, Richard assured her. The Voyager has a few new tricks now, thanks to your people. She smiled, tracing the line of his jaw with her finger. Our people, Richard, after what we've shared, you're as much luminary as I am human. The sentiment warmed him in ways he couldn't fully articulate. Their intimate connection had revealed aspects of each other that transcended species, hopes, fears, dreams, and desires that were fundamentally the same despite their different origins. I'm still getting used to the idea that your father planned all this. He admitted that he chose me specifically. He recognized something in you that complemented something in me, she said, but he couldn't have predicted how we would feel about each other. That was our choice. Richard thought back to that first night in the sleeping bag, her innocent curiosity, his surprise at her directness, how far they'd come since then. When you first put your hands in My boxers, he said with a smile. Did you really not know what you were touching? Naren laughed her markings. Pulsing with amusement, I knew they were reproductive organs, but I didn't understand their sensitivity or cultural significance to luminary touch is communication first, pleasure second, and now, he asked, pulling her closer. Now I understand both aspects quite thoroughly, she replied with a mischievous glint in her eye, though I find I require regular cultural exchanges to maintain my understanding. Their playful moment was interrupted by the ship's alert system. Captain, to the bridge, Jackson's voice came through. The comm were being hailed by a Krell vessel. On the bridge, the view screen showed the now familiar reptilian face of Commander Vexnar, his scales gleaming under the harsh lights of his ship. Captain Mills, he greeted coldly. You've led us on quite a chase. We're on a sanctioned mission to Proxima Station, Richard replied evenly. As you. Well, no plans have changed, Vexnar countered, his forked tongue flicking between sharp teeth. By order of the Krell Empire, you are to surrender the Luminary Princess immediately. We have reason to believe she possesses technology that threatens galactic security. Naren stepped forward, her transform markings pulsing with controlled intensity. Commander Vexnar, I am Naren Nix, daughter of High Counselor Terran Nix and rightful heir to the Luminary Collective. I formally request asylum within the Coalition under Article 7 of the Interspecies Protection Accord. Vexnar's vertical pupils narrowed to thin slits. That's a bold move, Princess, but it won't work. We have evidence that you're carrying prohibited technology. The only technology I carry is that which is part of me, she replied, gesturing to her markings, and I have evidence of my own. Evidence that the Krell Empire has conspired with Luminary traditionalists to steal and weaponize our technology. For the first time, Vexnar looked genuinely alarmed, his scales shifting color slightly. Serious accusations require serious evidence, which is precisely what awaits us at Proxima Station, Richard interjected. A secure data vault containing everything High Counselor Nix discovered before his assassination. A tense silence followed. As Vexnar visibly calculated his options, finally he said, very well, we will escort you to Proxima, but be warned, any deviation from course will be considered hostile action. The transmission ended. Leaving the bridge crew exchanging nervous glances. He's planning something, Jackson muttered. Of course he is, Richard agreed, but so are we. The journey to Proxima Station proceeded. Under the watchful eye of Vexnar's vessel, Richard and Naren used the time to prepare, utilizing the lumen enhancements to scan the Krell ship and confirm their suspicions. Vexnar was indeed working with the traditionalists. When they finally docked at Proxima, a delegation of Coalition officials was waiting along with Vexnar and his Krell security team, their scaled bodies encased in formidable armor. This is where it gets complicated, Richard murmured to Naren as they prepared to disembark. She squeezed his hand, her markings pulsing reassuringly together. Remember, as they stepped onto the station, Vexnar immediately moved to intercept them, flanked by armed Krell officers. Princess Naren, you will come with us for questioning. I think not, Commander, came an authoritative voice from behind him. An elderly human woman stepped forward, her Coalition diplomatic uniform adorned with the insignia of the High Council. Admiral Helena Cameron, she introduced herself. High Counselor Nix contacted me before his death. I've been expecting you both. Vexnar's scales darkened with anger. Admiral, this is a Krell Empire matter. It is a matter of interspecies diplomacy and potential treaty violation, Cameron corrected sharply, and as such it falls under Coalition jurisdiction. She gestured to her own security team, who moved to surround Vexnar and his officers. Commander Vexnar, you and your team are confined to your vessel pending investigation into allegations of conspiracy and espionage. As Vexnar was escorted away, hissing threats in his Native tongue Admiral Cameron turned to Richard and Naran High Counselor Nix's data vault has been secured. Its contents are illuminating, to say the least. Then you know about the weapon the traditionalists were developing with the Krell. Naran asked. Cameron nodded grimly. And about the primal pattern you carry, the implications are staggering. Not a weapon, Richard clarified. A bridge between species, between minds, yes. Cameron agreed, studying them both with keen interest. I can see that now. The connection between you is visible even to those without luminary perception. She led them to a private conference room, where representatives from both the Coalition and the Luminary Collective awaited. The next hours were filled with explanations, revelations, and negotiations as Naran presented her father's evidence in her vision for the future. Through it all, Richard stood beside her, their bond serving as living proof of what was possible when different species truly connected. 3 months later, Richard stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned diplomatic vessel Convergence, watching as Earth grew larger in the viewscreen beside him. Naran's markings pulsed with excitement. Nervous? He asked, taking her hand. A little, she admitted. Meeting your family is significant. He laughed softly. They're going to love you, though I should warn you, my sister will have 1,000 questions about luminary reproduction. After everything we've been through, I think I can handle curious humans, she replied with a smile. Their new assignment as joint ambassadors of the Human Luminary Cultural Exchange Initiative was both an honor and a challenge. The revelation of the primal pattern's potential had sent shock waves through the Coalition, opening possibilities for deeper understanding between species that had previously seemed impossible. Not everyone approved. Of course, the traditionalists still had supporters, and the Krell Empire had formally protested the Coalition's interference in what they claimed was a legitimate security operation, but the tide was turning, with more voices supporting connection than isolation. Do you ever think about that first night? Naran asked suddenly in the sleeping bag. Richard smiled, remembering her innocent curiosity, her hand seeking warmth in unexpected places. Often, who would have thought that offering to share my sleeping bag would lead to all this? I knew, she said softly, her markings pulsing with emotion. Not consciously perhaps, but something in me recognized something in you from the first moment, as if we were always meant to find each other. He pulled her close, marveling at how natural it felt now, this connection between human and luminary that had begun with a simple offer of warmth and evolved into something that might change the galaxy. What you did next, he murmured against her hair, was indeed unexpected. Naran laughed, her markings brightening with joy. And we're just getting started. As Earth filled the viewscreen, Richard felt a profound sense of brightness. Whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together, a union of human determination and luminary wisdom that had begun in the most unexpected way possible. Sometimes, he reflected, the greatest journeys begin with the smallest gestures.